Thank you, John, and thank you all for having me. I'm a customer experience specialist based here in Perth. My little company, Terrific Trading, three-person company, we've been around for 25 years, working with organizations on how to better understand your customers to help you get a better result without working any harder or longer. An area that's so obvious to many of you, I'm sure the very fact you're in this room says a lot about the customer focus in your own organization. So at one level, dealing with the customer experience is pretty obvious stuff. It's common sense, it's common courtesy, it's just doing the obvious things right. At another, it's really complex and frustrating because it's about human behavior. And humans, including our customers, be they large organizations or the buying public, can tell us one thing and then do another. Say they're happy with our service, then the moment they get it offered cheaper elsewhere, off they go. So that there's all sorts of challenges with the customer experience. And one of the big challenges for your staff, for your team who are with you, is that customers know they've got power. And they can use that, not always in the best possible ways, to make life better for them and harder for your team in trying to provide service. So what I want to do is just explore with you some of the things to do with the customer experience. And in a moment, I'll explore the leading word in the name of this presentation, which is discipline, and why I've introduced it, saying that discipline's more important than dollars when it comes to impressing your customers. And we'll get involved in some discussions. I've got a little discussion exercise where we get to use one of the simple techniques that may be useful for you back in your organizations. And then I will pass around and just bring to life for you a customer experience audit form that I use when I carry out customer experience audits of organizations. Now, the sector that I work in is SMEs, particularly at the smaller end of the market. Most of my clients would have 25 employees or less, but sometimes I'm working with larger organizations. And for different sorts of organizations, there's different things that need to be looked at in a customer experience audit. The majority of my clients are tourism-based and retail, and mostly in regional Australia. So that's very different from the businesses in this room. Now, fascinatingly though, at times, when we think it would be interesting and the clients think we would be good, we work across a whole series of industries and professions, and that's usually because people get us in, and a classic would be the medical profession, because they're looking for an outside view on the customer experience rather than the view in their industry sector or profession. So that's where I'm hoping that this little exploration will be good for you, because I'm probably coming at it from a slightly different angle than your particular industry or profession would look at. So that's a background to where we'll go with this, and I'll lay out some things, and then we can get involved in a bit of discussion on some of the things that I'll explore. And the first thing is that when we tested this, it worked. Yes. Isn't it amazing how when you plug things in, how well they work? And this is just to demonstrate for you that I'm also very different to some of you in that I'm technologically challenged. And one of your big frustrations is also customers who are technologically challenged. And they make your life difficult. And the thing is, they are judging you, even though they are incompetent to judge you. And that's a real challenge. Our clients, our customers don't know what we have to do in our businesses to be able to provide the sort of service they want. And they really don't want to know. Unless you're really into MasterChef or something, you don't really want to know what's going on in the kitchen when you're enjoying a meal with your friends in the restaurant. But for them, that's a big deal, and you will judge them on what's happening and what ingredients are available and how they're putting them together. So we've got to do things to regularly impress our customers. And in doing that, I like the II approach, just as a simple one. We've got to make the first impression count, because that will bias how people see us from there on in. And behind that, we've got to have a positive intention in mind. So first impressions, as we know, are really powerful. Good ones will make our life easier from then on in. And by a positive intention, what I mean is within all of our organizations, we need to be having regular conversations with our team about what our intention is with every customer every time. And I'd suggest in some way, however you put it, your intention is to make your customers glad they chose to give you their business. Because in most cases, they've got other options. They've got other places they can go. And one of their options is just not to buy, to do without the service that you think is going to make their life easier. Another is to go elsewhere. So you want to make them feel good, almost to be patting themselves on the back for having chosen to do business with you. It's not, wow, these people provide great service. It's, aren't I smart for choosing them? And if what we're doing is making people feel better about themselves for having chosen to do business with you, they will be loyal to you, they'll be forgiving when the occasional thing goes wrong, and they're a lot more likely to spread positive word of mouth about you. The challenge with that is if you talk to them and you survey them, they're not going to say, I feel better about myself when I deal with you. That just isn't going to be verbalized. It's not going to come up. It's going to be behind it. And that's really what we're aiming for with this. When we think customer service, understandably, we think about the attitudinal people things that are so important, the personal stuff, the eye contact, the smile when the phone's picked up, the willingness of people to help and to understand our situation. But equally important is the procedural, the systems that are behind everything that we do. And I'll give some examples of what I mean by that, and we'll use a little tool behind that. And tying in with it all is whether you as boss adhere to the system's procedures yourself and how you act with customers. Because the most powerful way to influence anyone is with your behavior. And they will model their behavior on you as the boss and on experienced members of the team. That's how people learn most of the time. No matter what's officially said in company policy or anything else, it's the way we behave. So, for example, if you treat customers as an interruption, if every phone call that's come in for you is, oh, God, here's another one, then they'll feel the same way about it, because that's the behavior that you're modeling. It's a bit like one of the things, honesty. In any organization, it will be said how important honesty is. Yet, if a call comes in on a landline for the boss and the boss says, tell them I'm not in, what the boss is really saying is, honesty only counts when it suits us. The rest of the time, it's no big deal. We've just totally disagreed, given a modeled behavior that's very different to the behavior we want in our team. I think one of I've had my business Terrific Trading for 25 years, but I was brought up in a business in Scotland. My father was a timber merchant and sawmiller, so I was brought up from working in the business. He was also Eastern European, so as a young fella, you had to work from about age 10 every school holiday. So I got brought up in it. And it was amazing. I realized, I don't know, by about age 13 or 14, that even though I got on well with the guys in the workplace, they were watching me as the boss's son. They were watching, you were being judged all the time. And it's one of the challenges as boss. You know, I had the owner of a large pharmacy say to me recently, he said, Jurek, he said, it's amazing. You know, I come into work in the morning, I always say hello to every staff member. But this is a large pharmacy with gondolas and things with displays on them. And there might be a staff member who's down restocking something. So he doesn't see them to say hello to them. And he said, someone will say to me during the day, you know, so-and-so's upset because you didn't say hi to her this morning. She's wondering what she's done wrong. And he gets mortified when this happens. And he thinks, surely they realise that if I see them, I'd say hi. But it's just I got in and then I got busy and this was happening and that. So it's tough, this modelling behaviour role, but it is vital. Now, discipline. Discipline and customer service. The two things don't tend to go together. Discipline, we're in this era of empowerment where you've got to empower your staff, and great. I'm all for it, but there's also got to be discipline. And it's not a case of discipline's a bad thing. You know, the beatings will continue until morale improves. No, that's not the way it is. But it's also not about pain. This next one, is in my local health club. Suffer the pain of discipline or suffer the pain of regret. As if, you know, pain and discipline go together. I don't see it like that. I feel good when I'm exercising. Okay, I'm a bit slack. I don't push myself to the pain barrier level. But discipline does not need to involve pain. And when it comes to the customer experience, discipline in that area can free up your people. It can actually empower your people, because when we know, for example, let's look at the most basic customer service things. If we say, if you've got a front reception area, that we will acknowledge all customers within 15 to 30 seconds of them coming into our foyer, our reception area, with eye contact, a smile and a welcoming statement. And if we're on the phone, we'll still have the eye contact and the smile and the nod that lets them know you're on the phone. And one of the hard things about that is if your receptionist is got a headset on, the customer arriving can't tell they're on the phone at times. So there's a little simple obvious thing, but straight away you're saying that's the way we do things around here. You know, no matter how busy you are on the computer, getting off something really important for the last caller on the phone that you've promised to get them, you still stop for a second to do that, because that's the way we do things, rather than be with you in a minute. Oh, see this thing. Yes. Just totally different. And these are people who are working hard. They're not meaning to be disrespectful to the customer. And often customers will realize, because we're all the same, we get caught up with things that urgently have to go out. But discipline really makes sure that things don't happen that are wrong. Now, customer experience, here's an example of what could happen if we don't have the rules and procedures set out. This is a coffee shop in a mid-sized suburban shopping centre not far from where I live. There's a main thoroughfare there, and right next to them is a really busy Woolies. So there's a lot of people go up and down there. Now, the thing about people when they're going supermarket shopping is they're pushing their trolley, or they've got their kids, or they're on their phone, and they're there, but they're not there. However, as people pass, their mind is taking in, their unconscious mind is taking in all the signals of what's going on there. And if you can see in the corner there, we have two people having a coffee and cake or something. And how do you think they're feeling at this point in time? We have 3 staff members who are all cleaning. We have chairs upside down on the tables. I looked at my watch. This wasn't 20 minutes after the official closing time. This was 20 minutes to 4, and they close at 4 p.m. Those people aren't just buying the coffee, they're buying the ambience to share together, the time out together. Do you think they'll go back there? Not in the afternoon anyway, would they? But what about all the people passing? They're not going to be, oh, look at that, I'm not going there in the afternoon. But in their unconscious mind, it's going in. Don't go there in the afternoon, or don't go there after 3 o'clock. And then before you know it, the boss will bring the closing time forward by an hour or longer because people don't come in the afternoon.
I've been in cafes in Perth like that, and it's like it was sort of near the time, and 3 or 4 groups of people would come up and then be turned away. And just go, how can you turn any customers away? Well, sure, you close at 4, but it's 5 to 4, it's not actually 4 yet. Yeah. And you have a few people standing in the queue.
Wanting to give you money!
And you've got food that's in there, little fridge thing, you're going to be thrown away.
That wastage, yes.
Profit on that food.
Yeah, well said. And these are the things. Now, these 3 staff members are all working hard, but I would suggest the boss doesn't pay them a moment past 4 o'clock, so they want to get all the cleaning finished so they can get on their bus to go and pick up their kids, to go and do this, to go and do that, maybe to go to a second job, you know. So the problem is the boss in terms of performance standards, how we do things around here, and then discussing with them your intention. Now, I've written a couple of little books on customer tips for coffee shops. And one of the little tips is thou shalt not stack chairs on tables till at least 15 minutes after the closing time, and then starting at one end of the room, leaving the other for guests. And you notify them and say, look, you're quite welcome to stay here a bit longer. It all seems like common sense, but it isn't. It's about those discussions, and it's about the disciplines that go with it. If people know this is the way we do things, they are then freed up to deal with customers as individuals, because some things are already decided. It's not a thought of, oh, will the boss be angry with me if I don't have everything cleaned up by 4 o'clock? It's sorted, because the boss who arrives at closing time to cash up doesn't see the customers that have gone. They just see whether the place is clean or not. So what gets inspected gets repeated, because that's what's being judged. So they're some of the little simple challenges that come. And if we're aware of our intention, then we probably won't be doing things like this. Now, Rottnest Express, this is down at Frio. In fairness to them, I've checked whether this notice is around on their cash booths, but I haven't checked in the last 9 to 12 months when I think of how the time's passed. So maybe they have changed with change, but they certainly hadn't over a 3-year period before that. Unfortunately, we're unable to give out any change for parking. Sorry for any inconvenience. They are not sorry. They just don't understand the law of reciprocity, the importance of how you make customers feel. For any customer who's going down to the jetty area there at Frio, if they're going to go to Rottnest, the parking meters are murder there. You have to have a postgraduate qualification just to work them out. And then, oh God, I've not got the right change for some of them. So you rush up there and, oh, but that's holding people up. You know, the panic. Okay, they should have arrived earlier so as they had time to do all that, but customers don't always. And why are we going to give them more stress? And people like that, news agents in city locations are another classic for this, saying, I'm not a bank, I don't have to carry change for them anyway, they don't buy anything anyway. Well, maybe if you merchandised better and lit up your place and had a smile on your face, they would buy something. They're getting exposed to your merchandise, so just have lots of change and come up with quick, efficient ways to give it out.
We have the same thing at our shopping centre. We have a laundromat and the bottle shop next to it. The bottle shop's got exactly that sign, except transpose the word parking for laundromat.
Laundromat, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Instead, cash up with loads of change and have a nice display so as you're exposing, and they think, oh, I'm going to have to come back in here. Yeah.
Change for parking, change for laundromat right here.
Yeah. Happy to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Increase foot traffic.
A lot of them do, yeah.
So, when you think about it, these things are obvious, but maybe they're not. So we need to regularly be discussing our intention. Here's a place that understands that. This is actually in Buckinghamshire in England, near Marlow. And there's lots of fields round about, lots of dog walkers, round about. And yes, most years in England, there's plenty of rain. So they do have muddy boots. So the sign is saying, and this pub has the bench seats out the front so that people can sit out the front with their dogs and things like that. Whoops. So it's saying muddy boots, dirty dogs and children welcome. Walkers are welcome to just use our loos instead of loos are for customers only. Because they think if they get them in, there's more of a chance, law of reciprocity, that they'll buy a drink. If not this time, then next time. And it's a case of investing in your future and having the right systems. So what we're saying here is we need to be having conversations to get an understanding of exactly what, in your organization, an excellent customer service feels like, what it looks like, because people are visual, they're judging you, and what it sounds like. What are the things we say, the way we say them, and what we don't say. And it isn't always obvious. People don't think of what needs to be said. And sometimes just tweaking the wording can be a little bit, make a huge difference, such as having discussions with your team about how to say no to people. There are some things you have to say no to. Can't always be saying yes. If they want something tomorrow and you can't get it till Wednesday of next week, you don't make a promise you can't keep. But how do they say it? How do they put it across? To us, it might be straightforward, but we need to have conversations about what the experience sounds like. And you will find your team get very frustrated with customers who they do extra for. They come in early to sort something, they put in extra time, they sort things out, and then the customer whinges about the silliest, simple little thing. And Jan Carlson, the author of Moments of Truth, he said about Scandinavian Airlines when he was running them, coffee stains on the flip tray suggest to the customer we don't service our engines properly. People see some silly little thing, they whinge about it, and instead of getting frustrated, you've got to be thinking, great, fantastic, that means we're doing the big stuff well. Because people only whinge about the silly little things if we're getting the core stuff right. The good news about that is if we can identify what those silly little things are and tweak them and put in performance standards and have disciplines to sort them out, customers won't judge us as being a little bit better, they'll judge us as being hugely better. And that's the great news about this, about getting the trivial things sorted out. There was a Brisbane dentist, retired now, Paddy Lund, and I followed what he did for many years. Just a little 5-person dental practice in suburban Brisbane, in a converted house. And he wrote books about how he ran his dental practice, how he went from being a 40-year-old contemplating at one level suicide, at the other at least getting out of dentistry and going and opening a restaurant, because he thought that would be lots more fun. And then he was smart enough to realize he was a technically excellent dentist. He just had to run it differently. So he wrote a book about what he did called Building the Happiness-Centered Business, making his dental practice a happy place. And in the process of doing that, he made it fantastically more profitable. Had his no website other than one that sold his thoughts on how to run a business. You could only become a patient by referral from existing patients, and he had loads of business and was working 30 hours a week. And he and his team had a happier life. And among the things he said, look, we have in our dental practice specific performance standards for all the medical stuff, all the dental stuff as to just how it has to be done for dental hygiene. He said what we need is similar standards for what he called the critical non-essentials, the seemingly insignificant things that are the stuff the customer judges you on. And so instead of buying a restaurant, what he did was, this was in the days before, because Paddy Lunn's about my age, and when he was 40, we didn't all have the home cappuccino machine. So he had a top-of-the-waza cappuccino machine with all the bells and whistles imported from Italy, and he and all his team became trained baristas. So when you went in there, instead of the medical smell, you got the waft of coffee. Because he said people associate medical smell with pain and discomfort. People associate coffee with relaxation. I have a pain-free guarantee. Pain is largely psychological. If I can relax people, they're far more at ease. And so there was a whole lot of things he did that he called these critical non-essentials. One of the ones I love, I think he's got a bit of Italian ancestry, but there must have been a bit of Scottish in him, because it was a converted house and he had a garden, a little bit of garden out the front. And people at times would compliment him on the garden. And he liked gardening, but he never had much time for it. So he had a fella come round once a month to look after his garden, sort things out, do all the weeding and things. And so he'd say to people when they come, oh, look, I've got this fella who does it. And when the chap was in the next time, he said to me, he said, look, I get people asking me and complimenting me. Would you mind if I put a plaque up out the front saying you tend this garden with your name and business name and phone number? Would you like that? And the bloke said, oh, would you? He said, yeah, I'd be happy to. You do a good job. Oh, sure. Oh, that would be. And so he did that. And so he said it was fantastic. He only pays him to come once a month, but this is now his showroom so that people can see it. The guy, whenever he's in the area, is round making it look good because it's got his name there, that he tends the place. Paddy only has to pay for it once a month. I thought, appealed to the Scottishness in me anyway. So there we are. He called them the critical non-essentials. Now, what I'm going to do is pass round for you just a very simple sheet. And I'd like us to, just for 5 minutes or so, get into roundabout threes. If we could have the three of you here, the three of you there, let me see, the 1, 2, 3 of you there and the 4 of you here. Then just have a bit of a discussion. You know, when we talk critical non-essentials, what is it that we're talking about for your very different businesses? What are examples of critical non-essentials? And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just give you one more as a thought starter. And again, it's from a different industry, oh no, yeah, that's what I'll do. Here's one that would fit for some of you. Sadly, they were bought out by iNet some years ago, who have since been bought out by that lot who bought them. But WestNet. Years ago, I remember doing some work with WestNet, an amazing internet service provider who were renowned for their customer service. They started in Geraldton, actually at the back of the Retrovision store in Geraldton. That's what it came out of, and they grew. And to this day, you'll see people who have WestNet addresses tend to be in the regions. So they had that sort of country style. Western Australian started. And this would be at least a dozen years ago. I and my colleague Jan were doing some work with them on the customer experience. It's always interesting how the people who least need you are the ones who want to get better. And one of the things I really loved is, they'd moved everything to Perth. They were set up here in Perth. But when people have problems, they're stressed. They're not able to get at what they want. The speed's dropped. Something's gone wrong. And so the first thing they have to do, their tele team have to relax people so as they can talk through things. And what they would do, because obviously they know their clients, they would get up, let's just say it's Mary from Kununurra who's phoning, who's got problems. And they'd say, right. They'd see she was from Kununurra by getting her details up. And straight up the weather map would come up for Kununurra, because it's just typical thing that down here, we're in Perth, we've got people like John who are worried it's going to get a little bit wet when he's down at Dunsborough at the weekend, and he might get his boots muddy, and they're having a major cyclone or something up there. And we're not even aware of it or thinking, but straight away, and they say, yeah, look, how you going up there? I've heard, it's bypassed you, has it? Look, I'm relieved to hear that. That little interchange of I understand you, customer, empathy, straight away they're relaxed and they're easier to deal with. Now, that wasn't just one person who did that. That was the way they did things around there. That was a discipline. Find out, weather map, make a comment about what's happening there. Or just ask about what's happening there if there's nothing obvious. Is it still really cold at night in there at Mount Magnet, is it? You've won them over. So there's an example of a critical non-essential. So what I want you to do is just be sharing with one another examples that jump out at you of just little things that you and your team do in your business. Go for it. I'm going to break up your conversations. I always love watching when people lean into one another. It's a good sign. It's information is being exchanged that's of interest, and sometimes it's the questions you ask one another that are the great thing in something like this. My purpose in doing that was just to get the conversation started. I hope you will continue these conversations with one another and with your team. But let's just get a few examples to help stimulate our thought. And this is a chance for you to dob in a colleague. Dobbing is okay. If you think someone has a nice, brief little example that they maybe think was unimportant and nothing, but you thought was good, dob them in. Who wants to start us off? Yes.
We were working with Adam here in his shade sale business. And a lot of the time, most of the business is coming from council tenders. And so how do you sort of give that non-essential extra when you're involved in a tender process where more often than not, it's based on price rather than service. And we came up with the idea, probably he's already doing some of it, is that we're going to say to those councils that we can provide a maintenance plan for you. So we can go and check those shade sales throughout the year, check the stitching, make sure it's okay, even from a safety point of view. And perhaps even when that faceless person in council is making that ultimate decision on whether that tender is going to be granted or not, that he may even think, Adam's business was offering that little bit extra, so we might even give that tender to that business.
Who knows? It may be that you at least stand out, and maybe, yes, it's the attention to detail. I've dealt a lot with people where their main business is the tender process, and usually one of the criteria in there is about attention to detail and follow up. And maybe that's if unexpectedly you send in a report saying our people were out and they noticed such and just want to assure you everything is okay. We're pleased to see that after 3 years it's looking so good. Maybe those things just drip feed a little bit. Who knows? They certainly don't lose you anything. And if you can systemize it, yeah, good thought. Thank you. Someone from another group. Give us a little example. Yep.
Business, but we bought a house recently, and on the settlement date, they gave us a bottle of champagne, the box thing. It looked all nice, and then a little bit later, they sent us a voucher for a local restaurant and said, "Oh, welcome to the neighbourhood. We found this restaurant, and it's very popular here, and it gave us a $100 voucher for the restaurant." I said, "You'll probably be going here all the time, but this might be just a nice way to start off." And I thought that was a very nice touch.
An excellent touch, and the fact is you're most likely to talk about the experience of your new home in the early months. So if they can stimulate that discussion and get them coming into the discussion, they've done it. Yeah. But it probably isn't costing them. The restaurant may well be willing to donate that to get people in the first time if the restaurant's smart. But yeah, love it. Yep. An example from our group here. Some little thing. Yep.
We sort of have a discipline of the welcome address. It's not formal, but if we don't recognise the customer, it's a sir or ma'am, and work from there. And then it's pretty rapidly followed by an inquiry as to whether they are busy. They're business people that come to us. Whether they're busy, and it then becomes about them, and it's their choice whether they're going to open up and continue the conversation or not. But we've actually turned it. We believe we've turned it.
Yeah.
It's about
you're focused on them. Yeah. And that's you again. You use that word discipline. That's a discipline you have to get the focus onto them, and that's great for your team that you're doing that. Yeah, love it. Thank you. Something from our group here?
We have a pick up the phone policy, which is probably not standard for a web development company where a lot of communication is by email. So when I joined the organisation, everything was by email, and a lot of existing clients would send requests in, and because they don't understand the technical side of it, they're very frustrated.
Yes.
So as soon as we get an email support like help or I've got an issue here, the first thing we do is actually pick up the phone and say, just to put everyone their mind at ease and say, yeah, we can deal with that, and then we'll follow it up with an email. So
that's your process, that straight away there'll be an acknowledgement by phone.
Yes.
Love it.
And
yeah.
Also during projects, when we're actually creating a website, we'll make sure there's at least 3 phone call touch points.
Right.
So it's not all email.
Yeah.
So actually having a conversation and building that relationship with them.
Yeah, because this whole situation of realizing that people communicate with us are not just one channel, and even though they started with the channel of web inquiry or email, you've chosen to introduce another channel, which I would think would just about blow people's minds, because you don't expect to get the phone call. And that's just reassuring. And yeah, love it. So look, these aren't huge things we're talking about. They're the seemingly inconsequential things, but if we can systemize them and put them in place, it becomes the way we do things around here. And that's what makes a huge difference to things. I thought to kind of try and bring all this to life for you, this would be a good point at which to share with you an example of a customer experience audit that I go through with clients. And the one I'm going to show you, again, if you can take one and pass them around, is very different from you. My colleague Jan and myself have a project in the Northern Territory in both Darwin and Alice Springs, working with in each case, about 12 to 14 businesses over 10 months, small tourism-related businesses. And part of the process is we have 4 one-day workshops during the year, and we have one-on-ones, but I also do a customer experience audit of each business and provide them with a written report. So these are, in the main, in fact, they're not all bricks and mortar businesses, but they're almost all bricks and mortar businesses that people will go to, get involved with the experience in. So it's very different from yours, but I just thought, just for you to see something that might get you adapting something to suit your own business here, it might be helpful. I'll just briefly bring it alive for you, so as you've got it. And look, my business card is there if anyone has questions to ask about anything. If there's anything else I can share, I'm happy to do so. Because this is fairly simple stuff, but it's just about thinking, what are the questions we could ask to walk in the customer's shoes? Because that's what I do. I go to a business as a customer and walk through it. Now, this is not a mystery shop. It is not being disguised as a customer to go through the process and do a report on it. For frontline service businesses, I'm all for mystery shopping, whether it's a phone-based business or face-to-face. But just let us take through it. Now, the premises. For some businesses, parking is a big issue. I think of an accountant I did a little bit of work with a couple of years ago down Cambridge Street. They were in a new development. It's a bit strange. The parking is a bit iffy. So they had a detailed map of the parking, and they actually had a 90-second video going into it, which I thought was a great little thing for an accountant to do when there was a potential stress. So what's it like? Signage. You know, I just, when signage is out in the elements, often the signage gets faded and it looks as though, I think, I was going round to one business in Osborne Park not long ago, and the street that I went down, I thought at least 3 or 4 of the businesses looked as though they were out of business. Now, they're probably absolutely flat out, but they don't look at it like a first-time user. The regulars won't either. But see, one of the difficulties in business to business is we've maybe dealt with an organization for years, but all of a sudden some key manager moves and someone else comes in and they've got their own favorite suppliers and providers of services, and they will judge you. And the faded signs and things can give just the wrong first impression. So they are obvious ones there about the external premises, the internal, the greeting, the lights. Are they all working? In places where there's high ceilings, that can be a challenge, and so we have to have a system for checking all of those things. The state of the loos is a big one. Are name badges worn if you've got people facing the public? Staff don't like wearing name badges, but all of the research shows us, in fact, I've got a study of 116,000 mystery shops across 3 countries showing that the service is perceived as 12% better in those organizations where all the visible staff are seen wearing name badges. No logic in that, but it's how the mind works. We feel more reassured. We feel less embarrassed if it's a place we go to regularly and they remember our name and we don't remember theirs, or we're scared to say it in case we get it wrong. Is that Jurgen or is it Jurek? God, I know there's a silent J there somewhere, but which one is it? If it works, do it. Cleanliness of the vehicles is a big one. I remember a furniture manufacturer, lounge suite manufacturer I was dealing with, who sold through retail outlets, but they at times would arrange for his stuff to be delivered direct to the customer. So his 2 trucks were going around the place, absolutely filthy. And I remember being behind one on the freeway, and it was so dusty, people had written obscene things in the dust. And I thought, oh no, and I got onto him and I said, look, you have to have a performance standard. Those trucks must, we don't have time, Jurek, we're flat out. I said, fine, paint your name off the trucks. Because every time, now this particular lounge suite business did not put things together with a staple gun. Underneath the fabric, they did things really well. But they would be judged. If people see that dirt, they think, God, there's probably a shoddy job under the fabric or the leather. That's the inconsequential things, the critical non-essentials that are important. So the state of the vehicles. Emails and other written communications. Our forms as brief and simple as possible to complete. Is the language customer friendly? Our emails and letters written in outdated business language. I have a mission in life to try and do away with the phrase, please do not hesitate to contact me at the end of emails or letters. What is all this business about hesitation? Please contact me. Or better still, I'll contact you to make sure you've received this if I haven't heard from you by Wednesday. There's these things that seem to have been passed down through generations that still get included. One accountant I was dealing with recently, they're mainly in the business-to-business field, so they're dealing with their clients regularly, but they had a couple of email templates that weren't personalized with reminders for their clients about things. And I said, hey, if I'm Jurek Leon of Terrific Trading and I've been a client of yours for years, I don't want a dear sir or madam start to my email, thank you very much. Oh God, are we doing that? We hadn't even noticed. It was just the template hadn't been checked. So these little things can happen. The subject line, such a big one. Does the subject line always reflect the content of the email? Now, you will have your clients get back to you about something totally different. You've maybe sent them something, maybe it's your newsletter, and they get back to you about something completely different. The subject line doesn't tell you that, but when you respond to them, make sure that all your team has the subject line relevant to what the discussion's about. Otherwise, things get lost in inboxes. So simple little things that make a difference. Telephone performance standards were mentioned earlier. Speed of response. Do we have a performance standard for that? And that doesn't mean we need to announce to customers that we will respond to everything within 1 working day or 2 hours or whatever it is, but internally we need to get it right. We need to know what we want to promise our customers, but don't promise it to them till we can deliver it 99% of the time. Processes for internal communications. How are customers talked about internally? We can say all this nice customer servicey stuff, but if it's, you know what so-and-so said when I was out there, and if we talk about our customers like they're idiots, while we switch and experienced members of our team switch back to the right mode, it's the inexperienced ones that get this customers are idiots mindset. One of the things that I spring on people, particularly I've been doing it in the tourism and retail sectors, I ask them, tell them they've got 2 minutes in groups to come up with the 10 stupidest things that customers ask. And they're into it, And then you'll get the occasional person who says, I don't think customers ask stupid questions. Oh, but what about this? I was up in Carnarvon and it was how long's the 1 mile jetty? Up in Exmouth, someone said, I had someone asking what time's the 4 o'clock bus? And there was this lady from the library there, and I thought it was so good. She said, I don't think it's a stupid question, it's just how they've said it. Because when they come from the campsite, you've got a walk of at least 10 minutes often to the closest bus stop. So maybe they actually want to know from the time they need to leave their campsite. So just clarify the question. Right, yeah. So there's no such thing as a stupid question. So how we talk about customers and that sort of stuff is important. Some of you are the web experts in this room. I'm certainly not, but I just try and look at things through the customer's eyes. And if there's things like you have a news section and the latest item in it is 2015, what does that say about you? And it's just because you're too busy. You don't look at it yourself. But take off the news section. If you don't have time to update it, remove it for a while. Don't put it back till you do. There's little things like that. Are your links still working? It's amazing how often they're not, but you don't know. So someone in the team has to have the job of checking through it once a week or once a month or whatever is appropriate. Your print promotional materials. Here's one that would certainly suit any of your business. What are 3 things your customers like most about dealing with your organization? Once you give them to me, how do you know? How have you decided that? What are 3 things they like least? What are the irritations they have? How do you know? I know in my organization, it's my colleague, we're a 3-person organization, 2 trainers and consultants, my colleague Jan and myself, and 1 OG. That's an organizational goddess, by the way. Every organization needs one. But the biggest frustration for people is they can't get hold of Jan and myself a lot of the time. Because this is completely off. I do not check it, and I do not put it on during tea breaks or lunch breaks, because I don't want my mind taken away from where I am, unless I know there's likely to be an emergency of some sort. I won't be distracted. So that ain't good. My customers, want to know something from Jurek or from Jan. But so we know there's a frustration. So what can we do to soften it? How can we have, frequently asked questions that are going to help or something else? But we've got to identify what are the things, first of all. How do we collect customer feedback? Lots of people can answer that one, and then they have trouble answering the next one. How do you use the feedback? Oh, we haven't had time to look at it. All of these things can come up. Can the service delivery processes deal with peak demands at different times of day or times of the year, when things can be very different in many businesses, whether it's to do with end of financial year or something else happening in your business? What recovery processes are in place when complaints are received or things go wrong? So hopefully that just gives you ideas on maybe what you could do to come up with something for your own business. This is pretty straightforward stuff, but it's just about walking the customer journey, really. That's the key thing with it all. And in walking the customer journey, we've got to identify what are the touch points where the customer comes in contact with us, whether it's going to the website, phoning us up, contact on Snapchat, any of those things, and what's the reaction like to it? Do the web pages take ages to load up? There was this Snapchat service available, but I've had no response. What's going on here? I have a friend, in fact, we'll see her and her husband tonight, who is involved in new homes building. She's a top-notch salesperson in her field, and she handles that side of it. And I'm amazed. We are, as we will be tonight, playing cards at 11 o'clock at night, and she'll get people coming in, ping, she gets the ping in. And you'll get the occasional weirdo who's had too many drinks at that time, but they're people who are expecting a response if the service is there. They're the challenges. So if you've got it, or what's happening at that touch point. And once you identify your touch points, you've got to walk the customer journey or journeys when they're dealing with you or re-dealing with you, and map it out, make it available, and then be looking through the customer's eyes. Now that is very easy to say, looking through the customer's eyes, but it really is a challenge to do it. Sorry. Just to give you an example, I was about 3 winters ago, on a cold, dark June morning, I was speaking at a business breakfast in Subiaco, and it was organised at one of the sort of bars in Subiaco on Rockaby Road. And I hadn't been to the venue beforehand, but it was one of these things. They were starting at 7 in the morning, And they warned me, Jurek, there'll be introductions, just 4 or 5 minutes, and then can you get into your talk? And we'll be serving breakfast, and they will cook breakfast while they're doing it, so there'll be a fair bit of noise, 40 or 50 people there. And I said, well, look, in that case, I'll need a mic, because what I'll do is the first half of the session I'll talk while they're munching, and then the second half, when they've finished munching, I can get a bit of interaction going. Oh, that'll be good. You've already seen I'm technologically challenged. So my concern was, you know, will the speaker system work? We'll have someone there to set it up with you, Jurek. So I get in 6:30 in the morning to get ready for 7, and the staff are already in there helping out, sort things out. And it was all dark inside the place, other than the main area where I'd be. And there was a little bit of staging, because I'm a fairly small bloke with those sort of numbers. So I was up on that, and the mic was there. And there was a problem with the speaker system. So the fella's fiddling around, and I'm trying to help. Not that I was much good with helping. Anyway, there was a higher area up behind me, but it was all dark because they didn't have the lights on there when I got in. So I hadn't noticed anything behind there. Anyway, about 2 minutes to 7, everything's working. We're all okay. Ready to go, Jurek, all right? You know, Mike, everything okay? Yeah. We're all set now. That's fine. Right, we'll just do the intros and then hand over to you. So I'm ready, and then on we go. And I do my presentation, first half, rather like I did with you, present some things, make some statements while they're busy munching. And then I have my first opportunity for interaction, you know, half of the way through or so on. And I have this pharmacist, puts his hand up, real card, fella in his 50s. And he says to me, he said, Jurek, he said, I loved the first 3 minutes of your presentation. Really great. I didn't hear much after that, he said. And I'm thinking, what? And he said, Jurek, look behind you. And then I looked behind me. And, you know, I'm amazed this fella didn't have a heart attack. And that, on one side of the room, that is what people were seeing. Were they hearing what I was saying? I don't think so. Now, here I am. I'm supposedly an expert in this stuff. I spend all my time trying to look at things through the customer's eyes. But I was so busy trying to do my core business professionally that I didn't walk and look at things through the customer's eyes. And if I just walked the room, I'd have thought, oh, either that's got to go off or we need to put a screen in front of it. And it would be sorted. Now, sometimes in life, you learn who your friends are. There was someone in that room who didn't tip me off, didn't say a word, just smiled. You learn who your friends are at times in life. But I make that point just to say we can be doing everything well and not getting our message across. It's a real challenge to see things through the customer's eyes. I don't know if any of you are aware of the Beechworth Bakery story, Tom O'Toole, or heard him speak. Amazing fellow. They're still growing their regional bakeries in regional Victoria and just over the border in New South Wales. They are famed in the original bakery in Beechworth, in a town of just over 3,000 people, of having the highest retail sales of any bakery in Australia. Just astonishing what they've achieved. One of the little rules Tom has in his bakery is that, and you think about bakery come coffee shop, you've got two types of people. You've got the production staff out the back and the retail staff out the front. You've got a real chance for them and us there. But they put the focus on the customer. Every staff member, twice a day, when they come into work and when they come back from lunch, have to come in through the front door. Now, normally, in a place like that, people will come in and out through the back door. That's what they would do. But twice a day, they have to look at the world through the customer's eyes. So if they see there's lots of tables that haven't been cleared, or on the display cabinet there's big empty gaps, or a dog's been sick on the pavement out the front of the place, or there's dead moths in the window, they'll notice those things. And that is a discipline. That's a performance standard. That's a critical non-essential. Just they've put in a system to deal with it. They've walked the customer journey and thought about things from a customer point of view. Now, you're not retailers, but you are customers. So just let me tell you something about the psychology of retail. My colleague Jan is also a merchandising specialist, so she will do a merchandising audit of retail premises. The Telegraph Station in Alice Springs is an amazing place. It's anyone been through it when they've been in Alice? It really is worth seeing. Beautiful park roundabout, and they've got a nice little gift shop and coffee place there, but people will go around the amazing historic telegraph station that's there. And they get tickets for doing that. So the main entrance to this place, is those doors there. And the counter's there where you get your tickets to go on the next tour. They're guided tours. And one of their highest selling, highest selling items are these branded mugs, amazingly enough. And then I just get amazed at how these things manage to sell. Stubby holders, but they do, branded stubby holders. So they are big sellers. So you want your big sellers in a prime space. People see it, they'll buy more of it. So they had it in what they thought was the prime space on a gondola facing that front door as people come in. And that is, from a retail point of view, a prime space, once you get about two meters in or so. Jan said, no, you've got to look at the buying behavior of people. When people come into a place like that, they're anxious about getting tickets for the guided tour and making sure they don't miss it. A lot of them have probably left a run late, so they don't even notice what happens when they come in the door. They go and they get their tickets, they go on the tour, and after they've been on the tour, they actually go out that way and they come in through a back way, in through here, back into the shop where they've got time to leisurely have a look and maybe get a coffee. And now they saw that straight up there. Sales went up 30% overnight, just from seeing things from the customer's point of view. Now that's very different from your business, but it just tells you how we can change human behavior and get a better result just by tweaking things a little bit at times. So in bringing this to conclusion, what I'm saying to you is if you can positively influence how people feel about themselves when they're dealing with you, they'll view you and your business more positively. It just happens that way. It's one of the unfair things that when people are under stress, they will judge you in a lot less positive way than if they're relaxed. If we can get them feeling good about themselves, just like that follow-up phone call that you talked about there when they've got problems on their website, or as I mentioned to you with Westnet, getting up the weather maps. Amazing the little things that can make a difference. I've got a question for you, quiz question. I don't want you to call out. I just want you to capture in your mind the answer to this question. I'll just give you a few seconds. If there are 5 frogs on a log and 3 decide to jump, how many frogs will you have left on the log? Answer. 5. Why will you still have 5? They've decided to jump. They've not jumped. And that's often the way it is with things to do with the customer experience. We think, oh, that's a good idea. We'll have to do that. But it's never critical. You know, they're just, you've got other critical things to do for your customers that are important. But we've got to get this into, this is important but not urgent. We've got to make sure that the things we decide happen, and that's why talking about what is our intention with our customers every time is a great one to have with your team. Last little story I'll share with you is about the most important customer we ever had. This was actually a drive-through coffee place I got this story from. It's bit like Muzzbuzz. It wasn't Muzzbuzz, but that sort of drive in, get your coffee and out. And the fellow running it, he had this young staff member, I think she was still at school, really good. She'd been positive, fabulous, great with customers. So you'd have the barista making the coffees and she's on the window to greet and provide the delivery and that sort of thing. Fabulous for 2 or 3 months. Then she started to slip, you know, and she was just going through the motions. And he's thinking to himself, how am I going to deal with this? You know, am I just going to sound like her dad moaning, like a parent? You know, how can I re-motivate her and get her focused on customers? And then he was on with her one day where he was the barista and she was at the window. And they had a lull, a quiet periods. This was after school in that latter part of the day where you've got the, you know, tradies going home and that sort of thing and still got to another coffee. And quiet moment, and then he sees a car coming from the far side of the car park, and he said to her, he said, look, your eyes are better than mine. What sort of car is it? Can you tell? Yeah, what make? Ah, right. And what colour? Oh, it is it? I think that'll be one. Who's driving, male or female? Female. And there's a kid in the passenger seat. Oh, that's her. Who is it? She says, it's the most important customer we've ever had. Quick, get to the window. Oh, right. And she serves her and she's fully attentive and chats to the little child and it's all great and gets the order. And she said, that lady gave me the biggest smile ever, but I didn't recognize her. Who is she? Who is she? And he said, I'll tell you in a moment, but there's another car coming. Yeah, but no, this is the most important customer we've ever had. Oh, she says, and gets it. And that's one of the things to get across to our team, that the customer they're with here and now, they're it. They're it, and we've got to be with them. And if we can get across that message, then we will make customers feel better about themselves when they're dealing with us. And that's what will make them more forgiving, spreading positive word of mouth and stimulating, hopefully, more repeat business. It really does make a difference. At times these days we feel we're at the mercy of customers. I hope the message that I've got across to you is that we do have a lot of power to influence our customers, and so do our team. They have a lot of power as well, and we need to be having those conversations with them about how they can positively influence our customers and how that makes our life easier and gets us seen as being up there. So thank you for the opportunity to be involved. Thanks for getting involved in the discussions. I deal with pretty simple stuff compared to what you're involved in, but I have a monthly newsletter, Terrific Tips, where I just include little anecdotes and examples and case studies, just like I've shared with you. Not so much because you need them, but because they can be good conversation points with your team. And that's how I hope they can maybe help, because you're continually having to rediscuss things about how we deal with our customers, and sometimes that can be helpful. So if you'd like to get that, even if you've spilt orange juice on the one you've got, there's ones there, and just give me your business card or complete the form, and I'd be happy to give them to you. And thank you for the opportunity to be involved.